You guys might have seen this quote before. When a complex system is far from equilibrium, i.e. our global civilization that's collapsing right now, small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos, i.e. all the projects and beautiful organizations that most of us are a part of, I'm sure, have the capacity to shift the entire system to a higher order. So this is getting into physics and a whole lot of different social systems all kind of show the same thing. We don't need a very large percentage of humanity to fundamentally shift in order to shift the entire civilization. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here, because the starting questions were, actually, I'll show you the next slide. We'll get into that. Okay, so welcome to an infinite game. That is what we're creating here with Regen Civics, is a new game to create different types of civilizations, to regenerate ourselves, which involves the bioregions of Earth where we live, because our self is much more than our physical bodies contained within these particular flesh suits. It involves all the living beings on this planet, because we're all connected, just like the biology living on our skin and inside our guts, which there's more non-human cells than human cells in our, personal bodies. They're all part of us, and humans are very much that same microorganisms living on the macroorganism we call Earth. So that's really what the game is about, is how do we shift from being cancerous cells, which our current civilizations are looking at right now, to being regenerative cells that are living in harmony with life. I think you all get that. You probably all get this too. People are tired of the old game. They're quitting. They're looking for a new one. There's also this massive opportunity that there's trillions of dollars in resources wanting to help regenerate the Earth, because people are aware of the magnitude of the crises we're facing. Yet there's just literally not the systems needed to put in trillions and billions of dollars into our particular land-based regenerative movements. At most, eco-village or, small food forest that's coming up in a city, they can only handle a couple $100,000 or $1 million of investment anyway. So then what ends up happening is those huge funds that have 500 billion to invest, they go to stupid projects like carbon capture machines and whatnot, which I'm sure you all know are just not the solution. So real quick, what is Regen Civics? Regen Civics was an alliance that's been forming over the last 3 years or so now, to do two things. One, there's a bunch of organizations, all disparate organizations, not connected, i.e. the organizations I'm sure a lot of you are a part of, that we're all trying to be part of this transition. Two, so we are all coming together saying, how do we form an alliance and actually collaborate and work together to help land projects that you see over here? So the land projects are physical places on our Earth. I'll give you some examples at the end of this of some different projects that have joined, but land projects, physical places on our planet that are regenerating the Earth, healing our world, and creating a new type of game for people to play to be able to meet their needs. Why the allies and the organizations are the ones that assist land projects. And I'll get into examples of both real soon. And this is how we actually bring the funding in. So then instead of each land project and each organization all going out there and trying to raise funds individually, we said we're going to raise funds as an entire alliance, which is really helpful for investors. It reduces risk for them and increases the chance of success, etc. Also, there's a lot of problems that come from a large investor funding one particular land project. So people living in that project, they might not like the fact that one person owns a majority of that project. That might create a lot of social contention on both sides. Because on the other side, and I've seen this happen so many times in projects, where the large investor feels like, oh, I'm only here for my money, I'm not an equal partner. And they get to reinforce a trauma where they're not really connected with that community, which is also the root cause of a lot of conflict that comes from investors. So we knew we needed to form an alliance where the money comes into the alliance as a whole, and then the alliance invests in land projects. So this is creating kind of like an index fund. So then when large institutions do want to fund systemic change, they can fund the whole alliance and not individual projects or organizations. So that was me trying to do a real brief overview. Is this making sense so far? Slash, is there any questions before I keep flowing?
Makes sense in principle. Please keep going.
All right, I'm going to keep going. I think this is a helpful analogy given the context of this group. I think most of you guys get this, but I think it's worth repeating. We have a human organism. We are it. All of our organs work together in order to help us operate. If any of our cells or organs stop working with the rest of our body, they start competing for resources, we call that cancer. and it ends up, killing us unless we solve the root cause of what that cancer is. This is essentially what capitalism has taught us to do and how to organize, where every organization, company, business, etc., is on its own, competing against all the others in this, chaotic competitive world. So then we've got organizations looking like a cancer. Simultaneously, when we're trying to birth a new civilization or birth a new type of, ecosystem here, you can imagine that with, in a normal labor, the heart develops fairly early on. But if we just birthed the baby the moment the heart was developed, we're like, hey, minimum viable product here, we've got a heart, let's try to birth it out into the real world and see if it could survive on its own. That's essentially what we're doing with a lot of our companies and projects, is we're playing one role in this whole ecosystem, but we're being forced to, based on our current economic landscape, compete on our own. So that looks like every project out there trying to fundraise, every project trying to storytell for themselves, every project trying to run all the processes that a whole organism would be running, but they're trying to do everything, which of course is leading to a lot of burnout and a lot of what I would call a stillbirth or premature births. Big concept I tried to distill in a little second. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yeah, loving it.
So that's the same concept here. We have different organs that provide different functions for our body. Without all of these working in harmony, we've kind of got a challenge. And that's exactly what our movement's kind of been looking like for the last however many decades we've been trying to make this change. Is again, each organ trying to act independently and not really acting as a whole ecosystem, which is kind of the point. So see, these are some of the first alliance members of the Regenerative Civics Alliance. So I can kind of walk through a few of them. Seeds built new financial systems, so we can have new currencies, we can coordinate and do some other stuff. If you're not familiar with any of this, I can share this link with y'all and you can watch some videos that kind of dive into Seeds. But in short order, it provides tools for communities, projects, organizations to build a new type of economic system for themselves and join an alliance of them. So you've got community currencies, there's a wallet, but there's better than free transactions. They're free, but you can design them to be better if you want. And a whole bunch of different security features. So it's really nice. People who are new to the crypto Web3 world, we've really designed it to be super easy and friendly to use. And again, there's no fees to be able to launch or use your own currencies here, which is really cool. So that's one of the alliance members. So when we're looking at projects maybe want a currency. Seeds is the ally that would be able to help bring them that. Okay, what do you do with your currencies? This is where another ally comes in. Forgive my terrible graphics. It's just me trying to make them. The local scale is a marketplace, provides farmers markets, homestays, and more, also fee-free, and then you can use your currencies to set up your bioregion, which is something we're getting into right now. I'm just going to keep going super fast because I want to give you guys the overhead. So HIFA is a tool that lets you build a DAO. A DAO is another organization kind of form that allows you to do governance, treasury management, etc. So to give you an example, HIFA itself, it's been running for about 3 years. It's distributed, I think, about 3 million worth of value. It's never had a bank account. It's had over 300 people come in and contribute in some capacity and be recognized for those contributions. And that's something as another fee-free tool that's out there for platforms and projects to be able to use. Also, what's really great is a lot of jurisdictions across the globe are setting up legal entities that you can attach to your DAO, the same HIFA DAO you see here. So that you would be able to then issue tokens, which then looks like shares, which then could be partial ownership in a piece of land. So then instead of the structure that a lot of communities are stuck with now, where maybe one person technically owns the land, you can actually set up a DAO, have the DAO own the land, and then you can design your own governance with how that land is managed. So from, anyway, you can design it however you want. That's a long story. I'm not going to get into that. Keep flowing. Open Impact, awesome platform. You can do messaging and discussion, community management groups and news feeds and project management workflows, etc. for your project. So again, if any communities want this, this is another ally to help support this. Nestor is a tool for decentralized collaboration. So you're kind of starting to see a theme here. It's all of these organizations providing one piece of the puzzle for what projects might need in order to coordinate new types of economies. So our role here was to go out there and find all the different organizations that are playing a different role, playing a different organ, bring them all together so we can be better at supporting projects. This is another platform that allows you to be able to launch NFTs, to be able to do crowdfunding. So if you want to launch an NFT to raise funds for your project, you can be able to do so with them. Get Coined Down, which is an awesome platform for also fundraising. So you can put up your project or your organization, what you're doing, how you're regenerating the planet, and you can raise some funds there. Regen Living is an alliance for helping people design regenerative economic systems. So if this is completely new for you, this is another ally that helps projects walk through that process of what does it look like to be regenerative and how do you design a regenerative economy for your organization, land project, whatever. The Land Trust helps with a lot of the legal side. So there's a huge, really deep legal landscape of how you might set up your legal entity. They've been working on that for years, trying to figure it all out, and they're here to help projects navigate that crazy journey of how you might set up your organization in a legal jurisdiction somewhere. I'm still working on that slide, so ignore those for now, etc. I'm not going to spend too much more time. There's a bunch of different allies, but I feel like I'm not having enough time to really go over it all here. So let me move down then to projects. So that's just to give you an idea, a bunch of allies coming together that are all here to help a project. What is a project? Physical piece of property on our earth that wants to raise funds, raise resources. So this is something else that we're providing as tools, is we can go beyond just raising money. Our projects don't just need a bunch of money, they need all the things money can buy. You know, you might, instead of raising money to pay a builder to build a house, you might actually just raise a builder. You can say, hey, we need a builder. Someone in your community might be a builder. And they're like, yeah, I'll work for tokens instead of working for money. You know, I'll work for a share of ownership in this project. So this is what we call crowd pooling, is you can pool in all the resources you need in order to make it work. Maybe you want to buy a tractor and you think you need to raise money for that. Maybe someone has a tractor in your community, they'd be willing to contribute it, etc. So that's the main concept between crowd pooling, is you could put earth, you know, ownership of the land, all the resources you need in order for a project to succeed. You can put that into a DAO and start governing it as a community. All right, that's the main concept. I'm going to run over projects and then I'm going to bring it to questions. So here's some of the projects we're working with right now. There's Ubuntu. Kelly's actually in another session right now giving a talk, but this is great. It's a 4,000 acre project in Nicaragua, doing an Ubuntu style community. There's Finca Sagrada. This one's in Ecuador, 684 acres. It started off as a biodynamic farm, but they're converting into an eco-village. And other people might be able to come and join the project and become part of it. Tabby Regenerativo, it's 3,300 acres in Mexico, and they're taking over this building, and this is an actual building that's on it. It used to be an old farm center. Awesome and beautiful property, a lot of potential here. We have Liminal Village, and you might have seen some of these projects actually pitching at Rebuild, which is really cool. This one's in Italy. I'm just going to keep running through these again. You guys get the idea. So we ran one season where we brought 13 different projects together across the globe. You guys can just look at them as I weave through here. The main idea was giving a wide variety of different projects and a wide variety of legal jurisdictions. That was kind of one of our first ideas. So we can try to figure out what were the same patterns that all projects needed to have worked out in order for them to succeed. So you saw we started, 4,000 acres in one down to 1 acre urban garden and regen hub right in the center of town. So again, a wide diversity of projects to walk through with them, etc. So there's a bunch of other projects that have joined. Okay. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to send it over to here. I'll also share this link if you're interested in any of this and you want to dive more. You can actually come and click here and see the season 1 playlist where representatives for each of those projects and a bunch of the organizations came together to walk through all the steps of what it might take in order to launch one of these projects. So they designed, what is the structure of our project? What does our economic system look like? What does our legal system look like? If we're creating new tokens, how do we do, tokens to actually build new types of economies? What does our ecosystem look like? What is our game guide? How might we evolve through conflict evolution, etc. So there's a lot there. So you can come here and you can actually unpack all these episodes, see a little bit more about all the projects where they each have a different video explaining what they're about, which is really nice. If anyone has a project and wants to join the next season, feel free to reach out to me or just apply right here, click this button. Okay, that's a brief overview of what we've been up to. I will share that link here. I feel, and I know I probably need 2 hours to go over that without feeling like I'm being stressed. So bear with me if that felt a little chaotic. But what I really wanted to do is just give you that brief overview and then turn it to questions. So whatever questions you have, as simple as they are, I'd rather have this as a dialogue than me talking at you. So I'll pause there. If you want to speak your question, feel free to unmute yourself or put your hand up or put your question in the chat and I can read it for you.
Thank you, Reiki. It was wonderful. Just to bring a little bit of awareness, we will have like 5 to 8 minutes. Then we have to change because 7:45 we start another session. Now we have to connect with the speaker a few minutes before. Okay. So yeah, any questions are welcome, as Reiki said.
So I've got a question and I want to thank you very much. You packed a lot into that presentation and there's lots I'd love to unpack. But if we think about nature as a metaphor, there's always a lot of experimentation when something new is taking off. You can think of a number of seeds being thrown into the earth and some thrive and build community to others are more resilient than others. So how do we learn fast across this whole ecosystem that you've been creating so that we can kind of really work with what's working and what's resilient and got momentum?
Yeah, I mean, I love that. And that's probably a better way of starting off this conversation because that's probably one of our core purposes of the Alliance. Because when we create that index, for example, if one project, quote, fails, it doesn't harm the whole ecosystem because all the time that all the people who are part of that project or maybe the ownership of the land, et cetera, could all just be absorbed back into the whole Alliance. So one, it helps making failure like obsolete actually, because all the other projects get to learn from their quote failure and they don't, lose their job and have this whole like, oh, this particular project failed and it's all lost and then they dissolve into nothing and it's awful. So that's one of the other reasons for having the Alliance is to help reduce that concept of failure. And the other reason is to bring in tools that can be replicated. So each DAO that I was sharing or do whatever you want to call them, I can actually just share one real quick. This is how you might organize your economy. So you can have your different organization here, which has different roles, different governance policies, etc. Ones that start working, other groups can copy them. So instead of having to go through and reinvent everything, you can see an organization that's working really well. Let me just take you to the Explore tab here. You can see a whole bunch of different organizations that are getting started right now. But let's say, okay, I love how Haifa is running itself. Maybe I don't actually, but just an example here. And they have 11 different badges, 37 different active roles. They have a bunch of different things that they've spent years putting together here, right? Instead of every project that likes this model having to start from scratch, they can actually come in here and copy this. And we can start creating templates for all the successful, experiments as we start learning from them. So that was the other idea with the Alliance is how do we bring together the suite of tools to significantly reduce the overhead and chance of failure of new projects getting off the ground. In short order. So yes, I love your question and it's absolutely kind of driving our thoughts here. Did that answer it in any way? Was that helpful? Yeah. Thanks, Jane. Any other thoughts or questions?
Great to see you, Reiki.
Hey, Josh, how you doing?
Love the idea of, it makes so much sense rather than, 20 different projects searching for the funding, have one entity that brings it in. Where in the process are you all with that right now of what is like the name of that entity that is the umbrella? Is Regen Civics kind of the concept, or is there an entity that is currently open to receive investment, and whether that's in fiat currency or coins or other currency, just kind of where are you in the process right now?
Yeah, let me bring back that slide again. The reason I also wanted to talk about birth and not trying to rush things is that's exactly what we're trying to do with this is treat it like a birth. It needs to have the whole 9 months for birth. This might need 4 years, whoever knows how long, until we have actually all the organs there and everything ready. So we've been working on this for 3 years now. probably longer really in form, but we're not ready yet. One of the reasons why we're also not ready to receive funds is the legal entity we're going to be setting up don't exist yet. There's two, one in Mauritius. Actually, there's three. There's one in Liechtenstein, one in Mauritius, and one in Utah that all just passed recent legislation that's not active yet. Where basically you can set up a DAO just like I was showing you, and that is a legal entity. There's not a bunch of hoops you have to walk through. It's really simple. So then once we have that structure, we can start taking investment. But before we went to investors, we also wanted to say, hey, we're a whole organism. We have all the allies we need to actually help a project from conception, like people being like, yep, we love this. We have no idea about anything. We need all the allies to walk them through every step from that to successfully launching a land project. And I believe we're almost there. What we're doing for the rest of this year is bringing in more allies and then setting up our DAO. So we'll be issuing tokens to all the different organizations and land projects, so that by the beginning of next year, this entity, which is called Regenerative Civics, will own tokens from all the different allies and all the different land projects. So then anyone who's been trying to talk to investors from any land project or organization, they can actually sweeten the deal and say, instead of investing into our project, why don't you instead invest into Regenerative Civics? And since I'm the one that brought in the investment, we can earmark those funds to that land project. But then the investor gets a share of all the projects and all the organizations. And it reduces all the conflict we talked about, and we can get into for a whole video, I'm sure, about all the problems that come into a large investor coming into one land project, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we're at with the structure, is planning on launching it next year, doing all the groundwork to get it ready this year.
Awesome. So let's say, somebody brings in a connection with an investor to Regen Civics. They're going to invest $100,000. If you earmark it for, so-and-so village that person was with, is there already kind of a concept of like how much would be earmarked for that village, or would the council have a decision-making process of, what went to the whole entity and what went to that person who brought it in?
At the beginning, we're doing a lot of earmarking because people have already put in a lot of time to talk to investors, and that's totally fine. There's only a few people earning tokens making this thing run. So Regenerative Civics itself doesn't have a lot of operational costs yet. Also, Regenerative Civics is going to be governed by all the projects and organizations. So when it does start getting more funding, where someone comes in not particular from a land project organization, but it's a big institution we're talking to, then where that money goes throughout the ecosystem is up for the ecosystem to kind of decide. So that's when we start thinking and acting like a whole ecosystem rather than an individual project.
Awesome.
So for example, we get $1 billion in funds, but at this moment, there's a lot of people that are just super confused about how this works. So there's organizations that are doing the storytelling and onboarding and like that type of stuff. So maybe we send funds to them. Or, maybe it's a different stage and no one knows about this. So there's different organizations that are reaching out and letting people know. Or we don't have enough funds. We got to fund the fundraising organizations, etc. So we can start thinking like a whole ecosystem, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ricky. I'm afraid we have to leave because I have to connect with the next speaker in the next minute. But thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for joining. There's the links in the chat to explore more about seeds. Yeah, you can join the next sessions and later on the closing ceremony of the gathering.